Well said, Regina, and that is what we are set to converse in around the next hour, just exactly 19 minutes past the top of the hour, right in time for that first conversation of the day. We train our focus on matters of achievement as well as challenges that are facing the engineering sector, and my guests are already on set. I'm holding court with Engineer Patrick Wambulwa to my far left, who is the Chairman, Association of Consulting Engineers of Kenya, and right next to him is Engineer Nathaniel Matalanga, the immediate past president, IEK, that is the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I just want to start with you, Engineer Patrick, and this is in respect to that conference that took place in some time in October. It was a 3-day conference. Talk to me a bit about that particular conference and what it sought to achieve. Let's broach this discussion from that particular point.
Thank you. The conference was held in October in Kisumu, and its theme was re-engineering. Sorry, it was about infrastructure development in Africa. One of the key pillars of integration of Africa is development of infrastructure that will fast-track transportation of goods and interaction of people. So this conference attracted a total of 400 participants from both Kenya and the East African region. The country that was heavily present was Sudan, and also people from county government. It was meant to be a platform for exchange of ideas so that we address the challenges in infrastructure.
Yeah, exchange of ideas. Do you feel in your perspective that indeed this was achieved? Because you just talked about infrastructural development, and not just in Kenya, but this is also beyond our borders. Yes,
because for us to develop as Africa, we need infrastructure that links our countries. Telecommunication, transport, which is a key player, both railway, road, sea, and telecommunication. So that's why we saw the need to discuss the achievements and challenges in infrastructure development. And we ended up with the resolutions. Some are for us ourselves as professionals to work on. Others are for national governments, and others are for county governments. And that conference also, we sought to enhance the interaction of engineers in Kenya with the county governments. So we requested, it was opened by the governor of Kisumu and closed by the governor of Kakamega. And we had a good interaction with the county governments so that they enhance infrastructure development at their level.
I hear you. And momentarily we'll come to those achievements, particularly in the infrastructural development. You can bear witness that particularly the previous regime was big on that when it comes to road constructions, and also seeing the same being replicated, so to speak, in this current government. So we'll come to that momentarily. But Engineer Nathaniel, the 29th IEK convention equally took place in November. This obviously just shows you that this has been an ongoing convention for us to get to the 29th of it. But talk to me about the necessity of this one and just, you know, the purpose that it served.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think I'm very happy also to be back. You know, the last time we were talking about the upcoming conference. Yes. And now we are saying the conference happened and we got a lot doing
like a postmortem.
Postmortem, it happened and we got a lot of benefit. It was mainly to talk about sustainable development in the era of climate change. So we're very lucky. We got more than 3,000 delegates attending from all over the world, actually. We were very privileged that we got an address from the president of the Washington Accord, Emeritus Professor Elizabeth Taylor. She gave us a lot of insight on how we can progress as a country towards getting accepted and sign up the Washington Accord. You know, this is very key to Kenya, because once our regulatory body, the Engineers Board of Kenya, gets accepted as a member of the Washington Accord, they will assure the rest of the world that whatever is being done in Kenya in form of engineering education, engineering practice is up to world standard. And therefore Kenyan engineers will be accepted to go and work anywhere in the world We also hope that our engineering education will attract foreign students, which you know that will bring us a lot of foreign income. Many Kenyans nowadays have the privilege of going to study in South Africa, and you know that is a main income earner for that country. So we hope as a country, once that this happens, we shall be able to get this going. And as a follow-up, we've gotten our resolutions. We're going to share with all the stakeholders. They have already, those who attend, we are very privileged. Our CS, Murkomen was not able to come, but we got the chief guest, was the CS Water. And she was with us, gave us a lot of insight, and promised that whatever discussions we were having with her, she was going to take it up with our CS Murkomen, and she will ensure that matters we discussed will be followed up closely to ensure that the country moves forward. As a follow-up, the international community who attended, Kenya pitched to host the next General Assembly for the World Council of Civil Engineers. And I'm happy to report that this was allowed, and this year in November we shall be going back to Mombasa, but now hosting the General Assembly of the World Council of Civil Engineers. You know, Kenya, we are members of international organizations. We're just not local. Kenya is a member of the East African Federation of Engineering Organizations, and it's also a member of the Federation of Africa Engineering Organizations, and also a member of the World Council of Civil Engineers, and also a member of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. These are international organizations whose aim is basically to push for the place of engineering. And we know that the current government, the Kenya Kwanza, even see the slogan, kazi ni kazi. You know, for us engineers, kazi is engineering, because when you want to change something, when you want to do something, you say, I want to engineer it.
Yes.
So
you still use the term.
The engineer, exactly. So kazi ni kazi is engineering, and we expect that the government will give the engineers in this country a space to participate in infrastructure development. That is the only way we shall move. So we are doing this not just isolated in Kenya, but we are borrowing from the world best practices. That's why this conference we keep having, and when we shall be hosting the World Council of Civil Engineers, it will now be the 30th. So it will be the 30th time we as a country will be hosting this international conference. But we are privileged now. We have this, we can say we are riding along the World Council of Civil Engineers. We hope we shall physically attract all these international delegates, and we probably need to work closely with the Ministry of Tourism to market the country.
All right.
Yes, next week I'm traveling to Porto in Portugal to present our state of preparedness to host this conference, and we are expected to make a presentation basically to sell Kenya, how Kenya is. You need to come to attend this conference, and you need to, this will be the takeaways, but please take time to see the countryside.
I hear
so
you.
We expect to attract these international delegates, the world, you can say, trend leaders in engineering.
I hear you.
We hope the president and the establishment will give us a chance to visit them and discuss with them. Then we move this country forward.
Well said. Clearly, you know, the convention, whatever that was envisaged, really did come to fruition just from how you are enumerating it.
We can say it was, our benefits were beyond our expectations.
Well said.
Thank you very much.
There's also something that you talked about, and I'd like you to elucidate a bit on that, and this is in respect to the timelines. You know, the Washington Accord that you did say, of course, it's a plan in the offing, but again, what timelines are we looking at? Because you realize that getting that recognition would be a big plus, you know, for us as a country.
We started the process actually last year, but we realized that it was going a bit slow. So what we did, Kenya, we are very lucky. The Institution of Engineers of Kenya, is as I explained, is a member of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. So we pushed, and we are very lucky to report that in October last year, the regulatory board, which is the one going to sign up the Washington Accord, got accepted as an affiliate member of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. Now, with that acceptance, we are able to accelerate this process, and we expect that in 2024, EBK should be, Engineers Board of Kenya, should be accepted as an associate member of the Washington Accord. After that, with the monitoring, we are able to continue demonstrating to the rest of the world that we are keeping to the world standards, and then we maybe after some time, another 2 years, we can be a full member. But the benefits will start flowing the moment we become associate member, which we expect to achieve in 2024.
2024.
Yes, and the board is making a lot of effort. We know that this process needs a lot of government support because it's government lobbying, and we've been talking to the ministry. Our PS is very supportive, Engineer Wambulwa, and we expect that the board now, which is directly under his docket, even with the last reorganization, we appreciate what the head of state has done, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, that he's managed to bring the regulation of engineers under one state department. Previously, we had the Engineers Board of Kenya, which was under the Roads State Department, and we had the Kenya Technicians Technologists, which were under the Ministry of Higher Education, and that was posing a bit of a challenge. Now, with the last reorganization, these are under one state department, so we expect that it will be much easier for our regulator, the Engineers Board of Kenya, to assure the world and even coordinate engineering education and practice in this country, the way we have been structured.
Thank you.
Yes.
And clearly 2024 is not really that far, so some good timelines to
It is 2024 is next year. So we have a lot of work, and we need a lot of your support. We need a lot of support from all the stakeholders to ensure that we remain focused and we don't drop the button actually on this journey.
Thank you. Engineer Patrick, let's come to those achievements now, and this is in respect to infrastructure. And you also clearly had Engineer Nathaniel really talking about the infrastructure much as the convention. The convention did take place in November, but this was largely like the backbone of the conference in October. And we know infrastructure is very key, you know, even for the growth of the economy of any country or state. But from your analysis and perspective, where are we in terms of infrastructure as a country? What are the achievements that have been made so far?
Thank you. Allow me to just add something to what Engineer Matalanga is saying in terms of the opening up for engineers to go beyond the Kenyan boundary. Within the East African community, the regulators of the engineering profession have agreed and signed a mutual recognition agreement, which means the engineers or those who are providing engineering services are free to work within the East African community. And as much as we are working towards the Washington Accord, which is international, but our space within the East African community has been
it's secured, good enough.
And leveled.
All right.
Yeah. So
at least it's a good step towards where we're looking into. All right.
The challenge, maybe we'll talk about challenges later.
Momentarily, true.
On infrastructure, the government, I think, has put in a lot of effort. The transportation sector, there is heavy investment that has gone in. Of course, you know, the SGR, the expressway in Nairobi, and many other roads that have been worked on. And I think now those who have traveled between Nairobi and Nakuru are taking almost 6 hours, 5 hours sometimes, when you are supposed to take 2 hours. But it is planned for dual links. So I think from my perspective, the investment...
the Northern Corridor?
Yes, the investment on the transport sector has been done properly, and we just need to maybe deliver on time what is planned.
Just hold on that point, delivering on time on what's planned. I'll pick it up on that particular note with you, but we are due for a break at this particular point. We take a very quick breather. We circle back with plenty more of this conversation, so stay with us. Welcome back to the program. We definitely appreciate your valid company. Still holding court with my guest on this topic of just getting to know the achievements and the challenges in the engineering sector. That is Engineer Patrick Wambulwa. To my far left, who is the chairman, Association of Consulting Engineers of Kenya, as well as Engineer Nathaniel Matalanga, the immediate past president, Institution of Engineers of Kenya, that is IEK. Let me just pick it up with you, Engineer Patrick, where you left it off, and this was looking at delivering on time, what was planned in respect to the achievements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think one way for us to achieve our economic development would be to deliver on time what is planned. And it is a challenge, and I think the intervention is to give adequate attention during project preparation, so that there is proper planning and preparation of feasibility studies for the project. That would give the required budgets, and therefore the National Treasury would allow adequate funding for the project. I would like to mention that in 2020, the National Treasury issued a guideline on public investment management, which is basically the cycle through which a project goes through and how you prepare for each stage and how you accommodate it in the national budget. If we adhere to that document, and it will be possible to deliver projects on time.
Okay.
The other, it's basically two things I would say, project preparation and adequate budgeting.
Adequate budgeting,
yes,
and proper appropriation into this project.
Yes.
But even when you look at delivering on projects on time, I want to take a case in point of the expressway.
Yeah.
You realize the timelines that had been put in place was it 2 years, in my memory serves me
Yes,
correct?
yes.
But it really did indeed take, that, the time frame that had been allocated or
Yes.
given.
Yes.
So then does this depend on a project, or what really informs this? Because again, there are some projects that really have stalled for the longest time.
Yeah.
So even as you talk about delivering on projects on time, what really informs that some really take the indeed stipulated time and some really take the longest time before they are achieved?
There are several factors that affect delivery of a project on time.
Okay.
Some of them, if I mentioned preparation, if the design was not tight or exact, then you find that you want to make a change when you have already started. So you need to either go slow or stop to allow time for redesign. So that's why investment into preparation, so that you have a watertight design. When I ring the bell to start, or I break the ground to start, I just run, because it is thoroughly designed, investigations were done properly. So the need for redesign. The second part that affects many projects in Kenya is the budgetary allocation. If the funding within a given year is not adequate, then the contractors have to put down their tools, because they are waiting for payment. And I think here is where those in various accounting offices need to give adequate attention, so that all works that are ongoing, their payments are done on time. So that is, there could be an element of where there is tax exemptions, there are delays to grant tax exemptions, and those cause delay. And there could be clearance of items that are being imported, the shipping and the arrival. Those are
the materials,
right, where you are importing components from outside the country. Yeah, like when there was COVID, of course, there was that interruption, but now COVID is behind us. it is opened up.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see Engineer Nathaniel wants to jump in on that.
Yeah.
But also when you talk about time, it reminds me of the Rironi Mau Summit
Yes.
road, which
Yes.
just the funding has been given, is it a week or 2 weeks
Yes.
back when the
Yes.
president, gave a go-ahead. And this has been a project that has been talked about over time because of how strategic the road around there is.
Yes. Yes.
But even as you want to respond to that, Engineer Nathaniel, even as you talk about delivering on projects on time, do you read political goodwill in some projects and lack of that in others?
Sorry, thank you very much. I don't think we would talk about political goodwill in some projects and lack of political goodwill. Not delivering projects on time is actually bad behavior.
It's just bad behavior.
Yeah, all projects should be delivered on time.
Right.
Because as Engineer Wambulwa has explained, projects are supposed to be designed. And you cannot start carrying out a design unless you have budget. So once a project starts, we cannot start talking about political goodwill and lack of political goodwill. If there's no political goodwill, then the project should not even, people should not waste time designing it and appointing a contractor. You know, there are two major players on each project. There is the client and there is the contractor. The consultant is basically a facilitator. You come in to design what the client wants, and you help the client identify a contractor, and you supervise the implementation of the project. So all projects should actually be delivered on time. Because all these challenges, we are not doing these projects for the first time. We've done it before. It is like a repeated cycle. The construction process is properly documented. What you need to do and what you need to ensure that it is implemented on time. You cannot talk about, a contractor will tell you, oh, we close for Christmas. But of course, you know, when you are signing up the contract, you knew that there was going to be Christmas. The only thing you can explain probably is when COVID came, which is like an act of God, which is beyond human control.
Which stalled projects across.
Exactly. And then that is normally provided for in the normal standard conditions of contract, how to handle such situation. And as much as you'll want to say that project was not delivered on time, you can explain, but you cannot say the project is not delivered on time because of bad political goodwill. It's basically bad behavior. What happens in this country, unfortunately, is that each of us pushes for a project in our own. A member of parliament will push for projects in his constituency. And even now, you talk to the governors, MCAs are pushing for projects in their sub-counties.
So this has no political inclination, it's just bad or good behavior
It's
from
just
this.
bad. Yeah. It should not happen. You realize the Kenya government is now having pending bills, bills that have not been paid for.
Yeah.
You can see that is bad behavior, because why did this project start without proper allocation of budget? You start a project saying, oh, the government will allocate me X amount of money every year. You know that. So why don't you just commit what your budget is? Why don't you want to overcommit and hope that one day some funds will come from somewhere else and help you finance the project? So with proper planning, that's why we are asking government that if we as a country want to move forward in a sustainable way, we need to appreciate professional involvement in this project.
Just allow me to butt in on that one, Engineer Nathaniel, so that maybe you can explain further on this bad behavior, because again, this also reminds me of what we call maybe the old Mombasa Road, or Mombasa Road as it were. It was a bit reconstructed to ensure that the expressway is properly constructed, and there had been conversations at the moment the expressway is done, which was actually done and completed. They were supposed to ensure that they reconstructed a bit to make sure that the places that were a bit deconstructed could actually go back into place for people to enjoy the road as it were. Right now as we speak, even the pedestrian walkways as is not really quite there as it were, and there was a proper provision for that. So then when you describe bad behavior, is it, again, I want to go back to my previous question, is this just an issue of bad behavior, or there's a bit of political inclination into some of these things that we see?
Maybe I will call that political inclination bad behavior, because there should not be political inclination to ignore the professional advice.
All right.
Because you remember when the expressway started, we as engineers queried the project. We wanted to know what the government was committing to and what the benefit was going to be. And we said, was that the best way to invest that amount of money? Because we wanted to provide accessibility to town. You know now there are challenges we talked about last time.
Yeah.
There's no off-ramp into town.
Exit to the CBD.
Exit to the city. But that will be addressed, we have been told.
All right.
So you can call that political, lack of political. You can want to explain it away as political. But we, from professional point of view, we are saying, no, politicians should listen to technical advice. If you go to the hospital and the doctor prescribed medicine for you and you don't take it, I don't know, you call that bad behavior. How will you explain it? The doctor told me.
You can't say doctor.
No. You can't say it. You can't say political inclination. Yeah?
All right.
That's what we are saying in industry, in the infrastructure industry, that we have professionals. These things are documented. If you look at the standard conditions of contract, the FIDIC document that is used in civil engineering work, all these conditions you are talking about, whether there is COVID, and we are saying that the bad behavior can also be that the client who has undertaken to pay the contractor doesn't pay when the contractor has done the work. So he has to pay to ensure that the contractor continues. You cannot be borrowing money from a bank as a contractor to develop and you don't get paid to pay back your loan. So bad behavior is then the client doesn't pay you, and many of these big projects are government, they don't pay you. So you as a contractor cannot do it. Or there would be other things. As a contractor, actually, a consultant will whip you to ensure that if you are paid, you finish the project on time. And all these scenarios are foreseen in the design and the documentation of the project. What happens in some places, and we've seen some agencies who probably, because of you calling it political pressure, but I call it bad behavior. Yes. They'll be pushed to commission a project without adequate funding or without adequate design because they want to please the masses. They want to please the politicians. But that is wrong from the professional point of view because you are doing that to the detriment of the tax that you've been given, the tax that we people are paying.
All right, thank
you.
So
you meant to design, you meant to document the projects, and if we do that, we can say that the country will be able to move forward in a sustainable way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to mention that
we are avoiding that political, it's still coming in. Yes.
The tool for correcting that bad behavior, whether it's political or
just
professional or just bad behavior, is envisaged under what is called Public Investment Management Guidelines, which is a requirement under the Public Finance Management Act. And the National Treasury has issued that. So we just need to follow that guideline because it guides what steps you need to go through in the process of preparing and budgeting for a project. Yeah.
Which mechanisms need to be in place to ensure you follow those guidelines? Because I want to believe it has been there. But the challenge is still existing, and I'm just realizing that we can't really talk about achievements
within the engineering circles, there is discussion that at national level, you need what is called a project office.
Okay.
You need a unit, and I think in the previous regimes, there was something like Presidential Delivery Unit. PDU. But I think it needs to be structured to be project focused. In some countries, they call it project office. So it is meant to coordinate the steps through which the projects are going on before they touch or they get into the budget, so that whatever gets into the budget and is committed as a government project, there is adequate funding for it. Of course, development is not government only, it is also private. So it means private organizations need also to address this issue of our project office. Now that looks like this issue, I said that I realized you can't talk about achievements without touching on challenges. They're sort of like in tandem, they go hand in hand. But even as you talk about, following what is written, what needs to be there, the issue of delivering projects on time, question of funding, you realize right now we are leaning towards what we call the PPP, public-private partnerships. Or is this, in a way, will it at least aid in sorting and solving these issues of funding
Because again, it looks like it's also one of the biggest problems of delivering projects on time, inadequate funding of this project.
Thank you. I would like to observe that PPP is just one mode among many of delivering a project.
So you have various other modes.
Yes. So what is important in my perception and from the practice of other countries is to address the step called project preparation.
You're going back.
That means I study, or we carry out studies to say, do we need this project? And if we need it, how do we do it? What should be its scope? So when as part of project preparation or feasibility, you want to say, how do I deliver this project? Do I execute it directly through government? Do I leave it to a county government? Do I do design builds? Do I do PPP? How do I get funding? So at that evaluation with proper cost benefit analysis, then you select your method of delivery.
Okay.
Now, you will be choosing PPP from an informed position. If you just wake up and say PPP and you haven't prepared, then you can be, how do you call it, exploited.
Setting yourself up for failure?
Yes, yes. The project could succeed, but you could be financially exploited.
Okay.
Because you are not working on equal footing. The person who is giving you the PPP offer is more informed than you, so he can exploit you.
So there's an aspect of knowledge in this.
Yes. So we need to pick PPP from an informed position and with proper preparation.
I hear you. I hear you. Engineer Matalanga, the question of PPP still, and yes, Engineer Wambulwa says that there are various other modes, just as he has enumerated some of them. But you realize we are really leaning towards PPP when it comes to our infrastructure projects, and particularly the road construction, expressway, Rironi-Mau Summit, using that triple P. Why is this one of those modes that we are really looking into as a country? Of what benefit is it serving us?
Doreen, you know, public-private partnership, as Engineer Wambulwa has explained, is one of the methods of getting funding for development.
Yeah.
And it's very good because you're basically bringing the public and the private. The challenge that we have identified and we propose to the government to ensure that, as Engineer Wambulwa explained, that you as the public, who is now going to partner with the private sector, you need to be very clear what you want and the agreement you want to get into to make it a watertight agreement so that either party gets best for value. The investor, who is a private investor, gets his return and the public is not taken advantage of. So you don't want the private fellow to put a document that is going to reap.
Just for clarity,
public, yes.
Allow me to button on that one, just for clarity. When you say the public, who really are you referring to? Is it the citizens or the government?
From where I sit, Doreen, the government is me and you. So we are the citizens. When I talk about
why I ask that is because when you had the issue with SGR and the document being concealed up until when the new regime came and they released bits and pieces of what had been in the document, and the public now, which is now you and I, leave the government out of this just for a moment, we would say that we weren't privy to what was being released to us. But yet there are some persons in the government who really knew. So when you say public...
Sorry, that's again, Doreen, I go back to my word, bad behavior, because the government of the day represents me and you. It's our government by the people, by the people. So these documents are supposed to be public for the people, These documents are supposed to be public. We have access to information. So they should be made aware. And that's why we as engineers have always pushed for that in the government engagement, formulation of the public-private partnership, professionals should be involved. You cannot get someone who has no clue about the project that the government is wanting to get into, taking the lead. And as I said earlier, kazi ni kazi, infrastructure development is only engineering. So unless you appreciate that you have people whom you have sent to school, your own sons and daughters, who know what to do. Some of us who are a bit older parents know that the children always know much better and faster ways of doing things that we are trying to do ourselves. So government should also appreciate that they have developed local labor. They have developed local professionals who can help them really pinpoint what is in need. The Institution of Engineers of Kenya in 2020 embarked on a process of developing what we called infrastructure record card. We documented the state of infrastructure development in the country, where we are, and even made proposals of where we need to go. Now, this document is public. It's been submitted to the ministry. So government should use such documents, should involve professionals. The other thing, and the one you're talking about achievements in engineering matters. One of the things that a major achievement that we achieved as engineers was the Engineers Board of Kenya managed to put together a document to document what are the duties of an engineer in any project. What are the duties of a consultant? And even they went further and said, for this amount of work, you pay him this way. So that document, we refer to it as engineer scales of fees. Previously, there was a bit of a blank where we had some documents, but we did not have legislation to back it. Now, that document is there. So government can use it and say, look, instead of us, when we are doing this public-private partnership,
yes,
government can even get, if the government officials don't have the requisite experience, they can actually get a consultant, a relevant professional to advise them on this public-private project that they are conceptualizing. So we are saying that the engineers are there, the Association of Consulting Engineers, the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, we have even the regulatory boards, they are there. We should support government and ensure that at the conceptualization stage, at the Treasury, in that public-private partnership office,
yes,
you need to have an engineer in charge. Yeah. You need to have an engineer who knows. And in every government entity, these things that are to do with engineering, you need to have the engineer to take the lead. In fact, people understand a lot when you talk about maybe lawyers and medicine. When you are sick and you need treatment, you go to a doctor. Yeah. And who assures you that this is a doctor? The Kenyan Medical Practitioners Board. You ask for his license. So now the board is able to say, look, this is an engineer, he has this, then he will give you these services, and for these services, you pay him this amount of money.
I hear you.
So for both private developers and government, yes, we now have the guidelines.
Yeah.
So public-private partnership is a very good way, because you are looking for funding. It's not a loan. You're trying to agree someone, okay, he'll get a bit of interest.
Because with where you're going, I realize that we need to expound a bit more on that triple P before we get to other issues of even professionalism, yeah, and look at some of those challenges. But again, we are due for another break.
Thank you.
We are due for another break. We just want to take that very quick breather. Of course, we come back, continue with plenty more of this conversation. Don't go anywhere. Exactly 4 minutes past the top of the hour, we continue a piece with the same conversation on just tracking the achievements and challenges in the engineering sector. Still holding court with Engineer Patrick Wambulwa, Chairman Association of Consulting Engineers of Kenya, to my far left, as well as Engineer Nathaniel Matalanga, immediate past President IEK, that is the Institution of Engineers Kenya. And Engineer Wambulwa, I'd like for you to tell us the benefits of the triple P. But before we get to do that, let me just finish off with Engineer Matalanga on this aspect of triple P and the whole idea of making it public. And the reason as to why I asked that is because I want to still go back to just that document that was released by the CS Roads and Infrastructure, that is CS Murkomen, on what the document had stipulated when it came to the construction of SGR, which is what wasn't really made public in that previous regime. And you realize there was a part of that document that was talking about, in the event of disputes, we solve it in China using China laws. And so then one would ask, where does this leave Kenya? And if at all, if it were made public, maybe we would have had an input in that. So when it comes to issues such as this, Where do you draw the line?
Yes, thank you very much, Doreen. I think from where I sit, where to draw the line is very clear.
Okay.
It is wrong, as I was saying earlier,
yes.
for a government to keep documents away from the citizens. These are our documents. It is like you getting, because it's our money, it's our task. We are the ones who pay tax. So it was wrong for government to conceal that SGR. And suddenly the new government comes and says, this is the document, you can see. Now, with that document, the issue of the contract between Kenya and China, and with that time, remember, we were told that it is government to government.
Yeah,
so
we weren't even told it's private.
Exactly. So you cannot even have a China government entering into an agreement with the Kenya government and agreeing that in case of a dispute, we solve them in China under our legislation.
With their laws.
Chinese, with their laws and even their language, because we wouldn't understand. So it was wrong. In a normal contract, you agree that in case of a dispute, you settle it in a neutral place.
Okay.
And the UN gives guidelines on how this would be. And I'm sure as much as this was a contract, under the issue of the common good and under the law, if something went wrong and they wanted to take us to China, you would be able to say, sorry, you go to a neutral court and say it was wrong to appoint this, to agree on this. Probably someone was under, you can say, a bit of bad influence. Again, we go back to bad behavior, whether it's bad political behavior.
Or just bad behavior.
Yes, but you see, in Africa, and unfortunately, most African, the leaders of African countries run the countries as personal property. So that's why you see a government in place will want to hide the documents from the citizens, which is wrong, and that has been the downfall.
Bad behavior.
Bad behavior. Yeah, so, and that has been the downfall of Africa. Because he's able to run the country as personal property, then he's able to amass wealth. Because we are not seeing it, because as a citizen, if you're able to see these documents, you say, President, your role is to guide us. You are our leader, we have elected you. Please give us guidance. We can only know you are giving us good guidance if you are telling us what you are doing.
Yes.
So the issue of having contracts and saying government to government, when they are released to the public, you realize it was a private company, our government.
At this point, there's nothing you can do.
And the point, of course, there is nothing you can do, but we are learning.
Okay.
Yes, so we as engineers are saying, the people who are involved in that project must have known. And as an engineer, it is your duty to raise this issue. They must have raised it to the right authorities, but they must have reached a stage where they could do nothing. Because if you are a civil servant, you have to put food on the table in your house, and your duty is to raise it, document it, and then you give it to the implementing authority. So it was not correct that that document was not made public. Whatever mistakes were made should have been corrected. And that's what I was saying earlier, that once you involve the professionals, once you go to a doctor and it's precise medicine for you, if you don't follow it, then I don't know how to call it. Yes. And if you don't, and if you are sick and you don't go to hospital, then again you die. Then of course you have no one to blame. So as a government, please, in infrastructure projects, the leader is an engineer.
Yeah.
So we give technical advice, we give professional input, and it's upon the politicians, or for us to get political goodwill, good behavior, that we listen and move this country forward. And Kenya is very rich. You know, we actually, basically we can say we can sustain ourselves. And the whole of Africa is very rich. And you know that at the international scene, Africa is seen to be the one developing Europe, or to have developed Europe. They took, you even saw in the last World Cup, Africans playing for these European countries. So we need to govern ourselves and have respect.
Every player was of an African descent.
You saw it, yes, yeah. Yes. So even in human resource, even in physical resources, they have taken away. So we as Africans now, we urge our leaders, be real. And the only way we can move our country forward is appreciating what our people can do.
Thank you.
Reward talent, and not always look abroad to want to govern us as if it is government, as if it's recently. I just explained to you briefly. We also need to protect the civil service, both at national and county governments. You know, as an engineer, if I want to go to work for the county and the governor wants to give me, I'm not protected. I know that maximum I can serve 5 years. After that, I have to be looking for another job because the governor will exit. So we need to have a system where civil servants, and it is the role of the civil servant to serve the sitting government. They do a good job. The fact that you have served that government doesn't make you a bad person because there's a new government coming in.
Thank you.
You should be able to serve it.
Yeah,
so we
thank you.
protect them, have systems that we protect civil servants so that they serve all the governments, and we are sustainable. We have continuity. We don't want disruptions. Thank you.
Thank you. And you always say that government is in perpetuity, that you just don't live because a new regime has come. But I want us to make progress on this conversation, and so then let's talk about those benefits of public-private partnership, because there's so much we can talk about the challenges they are in. And even just going to back to that particular document, the SGR, just as Engineer Matalanga is saying, so then one would ask if the engineers on board or the contractors on board knew about that clause, but then maybe they raised the alarm. So then whoever was responsible, why didn't they take action? But also I wouldn't want us to belabor that particular point, so let's just move close to looking at some of those benefits of Triple P. Engineer Wambulwa.
Thank you. There are many benefits, but I want to mention the big one. Yeah. The big benefit of PPP is that it is possible to do what is necessary even if you do not have money, because you are using the money of the private investor. So the Kenya government can execute a project even if they do not have money, which means you need to be more specific with, is the project necessary? Does it have economic benefit? So if you ascertain that a project is necessary, it has an economic benefit to the country, then the limitation is not money. You use the PPP by packaging it to attract or to give confidence to private investors that they will get back their money from the charges. As people use the project, then they pay. Like now the expressway. Anytime you go up the expressway, you pay for it. That money is used to pay, the private investor uses that money to recoup his cost. So the Kenya government can do the expressway or any other project through PPP even if they don't have money. Yeah. So that is the main benefit of PPP, that development can go on even if the national government is short of budget allocation. But the test should be that that project has economic value, and those who will use it will pay for it, and the charges are affordable. And those same charges can pay back the investor.
So there's nothing wrong with paying for that project. Why I ask that is because there was also an uproar. Remember when the expressway was being launched, and Kenyans really couldn't understand why are we paying to use this specific road, and some would even allude to the fact that we pay taxes at the end of the day. So then why would I pay again to just use a specific facility, as it were?
Yeah, because our total tax collection, and I'm not an expert in the tax systems, our total tax cannot meet our development aspirations. So in asking a person to pay for what they have used, you are trying to target target the service, so that you are paying for a service, and it's not a tax.
It's paying for the service.
It's paying for the service. Like the way I pay for electricity, I pay for water, I buy my clothes.
You pay, if you're in a rental, you're paying
Yes,
for rent.
I pay for rent. So do I need to save time between James Gishuru and the airport? Does it make sense to me? Yes, I can pay.
Okay, makes a lot of sense.
So,
and just as you said, tax is not enough to meet our development obligations. Like around now, we still collect 2.1 trillion, and 1.4 just goes into debt repayment. So clearly, the remaining can't meet our development projects at the end.
So that means another benefit is that PPP lowers the government's need to borrow. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you are targeting private money to go where it is necessary, and people value the service and will pay for it.
Yeah. Well said, well said. And clearly also where we are, we can't keep borrowing. We are almost reached our threshold after the previous parliament, increased that threshold to 10 trillion.
Yeah.
All right, well said. Now, we also talk about the aspect of professionalism, and I've realized in most of your responses, you've kept touching on the bit of professionalism. And on December 9th, EBK did release a public notice for those engineers who are, quote-unquote, masquerading as engineers, but they are not. They are fake engineers, but they use the title engineer. How do we curb this issue? Because right now you go to the market and everyone is an engineer. Everyone calls themselves an engineer of something, just the engineering. How do we deal with this issue? Because then also it will become difficult for you to really decipher the real one from the fake one.
Sorry, Doreen, I think it is very easy for us because, as I said earlier, we have a regulatory body. All engineers are registered by the Engineers Board of Kenya. So what the board was saying, beware that for someone to be an engineer, he must be on the register of the Engineers Board of Kenya. And you remember even the board has gone further and given each engineer an identity card, and I will see what I can show you mine. They say that you as an engineer, I don't know, Patrick, whether you brought yours. When someone says he's an engineer, he has to show you an identity card to say that this is what gives me recognition. So we are telling the public that it is very easy for you to identify an engineer. Don't accept services from people who are not engineers. Just like I said earlier, if you go to a doctor, the doctor will have on his wall a certificate. Doctors are a bit lucky because you have to go to them. You see, the engineer, you meet him maybe on your site. You don't have but also as a client, you should check. And this information on who is an engineer is public available. The easiest place to get it is on the website of the Engineers Board of Kenya. All different categories of engineers are there. The board registers a graduate engineer, meaning that this person has done engineering education, he has finished university, and they give them 3 years to practice. And then after 3 years, you're supposed to apply for registration as a professional engineer. They have a list of graduate engineers and a list of professional engineers. After you practice for some time as a professional engineer, you are now supposed to be able to upgrade to a consulting engineer, meaning that you can now set up a consultancy practice, and you can also employ other engineers under your arm to do work as a consulting engineer. They also have a list of all consulting engineers. And then there is now another category of accredited checker, meaning that for review of other people's work, we have also these people who have now specific knowledge, engineering is wide. You would probably you heard generally about a water engineer, a highway engineer, a structural engineer. So now these are specific specialities of people that in case you have this need, you look at this list. So this information is publicly available. And every year, the board actually publishes a gazette notice. By March every year, they publish a gazette notice listing who these people are and the different categories. So what the board was saying, be public, please beware that there might be people coming to you as engineers. Check that they are engineers. They should not come and say, I'm engineer so-and-so, when they're not engineers. You know, like, I don't have to say, Doreen, my name is Engineer Matalanga. I should say, my name is Matalanga, and it's upon you to say, you want to employ me as an engineer to check, am actually an engineer?
So also due diligence from clients.
Due diligence from client, due diligence from even employers. Because when you employ someone to do engineering work, it can be anything, national government, especially county governments. As I said, they have a challenge of attracting qualified labor. But we are saying that the counties are now executing huge projects, and they should ensure that those officials who are leading in these engineering departments
are actual engineers. And for counties, it's very easy because they have an establishment. So the county cannot say we have employed an engineer to do engineering work because you have, all the time, you have a human resource department, a public service CEC under him, whose role is to ensure that they have requisite staff. You will not employ someone as a doctor unless you have asked for his license. The board actually gives all engineers an annual license because the requirement is that you should remain up to speed with your profession. You're supposed to attend some courses every year. We call it continuous professional development, and you pay your subscription. And every year you are given an annual license. So in addition to that, and that's why we were saying, then you are on this, then how do you get paid? And how do we stop you taking advantage of the client? So they have even gone further and specified for your services, this is the fees you are supposed to charge. So don't undercharge, because if you undercharge, then you might not give the different duties that we have listed here. So they have actually listed duties, and this document is also publicly available on the board website. So we urge the government and the public to be aware. They've even gone further and also introduced what is called engineer stamp. So the approving authorities like county governments, national governments, and even you as a client, you should ask the engineer to sign the drawings and stamp them with his official stamp, because the board gives this stamp. If the guy is not able to stamp the drawings, if he's not able to show you his ID, then he's not an engineer. So it was just a sensitization exercise the board was carrying out to protect actually the public, to ensure that these people giving you these services, just like occasionally you see the medical practitioner board visiting clinics and trying to catch the people who are giving fake services. Even the pharmacists, they do the same. So that is the work of the board, to regulate the education and practice of engineering in Kenya.
I hear you.
Thank you.
And we have about 5 minutes to exit this space, and I wouldn't want us to do that without talking about the mega project, which is a matter that you equally alluded to, Engineer Matalanga. But I want to give you the last word on this one, Engineer Wambulwa, in respect to this mega projects and the space of our local human resource. Case in point, there are 1,000 dams that the state talked about constructing, and they said that they are going to begin with 100 dams, and this is for the aspect of to ensure there's adequate food production in the country. We're talking of also of Galana Kulalu, which is a project that has also been re-engineered. And in the president's statement via his Twitter account, he equally talked about dams also being constructed, in this area for the same purpose. So my normal question would be the space of our local human resource. Why I ask is because oftentimes when you have these mega projects, we always source for this human resource engineers from everywhere except our very own.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Just before I mention that, and I hope I can talk quickly.
Yes.
One of the achievements is that the government has initiated what you call graduate engineers internship program, which is good because it helps to expose young engineers to get a 6-month period. The challenge here is that maybe it should be made longer and universal, so that everybody who is graduating as an engineer, technician, or technologist, as part of that training, I get an internship opportunity and I become a professional, registered in my line. And that is why now you want to safeguard them. What is their space in the mega projects? As I mentioned before, the way to safeguard not just professional only, but including even local suppliers, local materials, and do it, buy Kenya, build Kenya, is to do project preparation from a local perspective, so that it is the Kenyans who are preparing the project. Then we will identify the right mode of delivery and what technology or funding are we getting from outside Kenya. Having prepared locally, then it will be easy to structure it to the benefit of Kenyan professionals, all professionals, and Kenyan contractors, Kenyan suppliers. And we are only going we are only bringing in what we actually need. We should not be protectionist, saying that we would like to develop to the exclusion of all the other countries, because all developed countries have developed by opening up. But you open up to bring in only what you need. Yeah.
Only what you need.
Yes, only what you need, and avoiding exploitation.
Yes, I think that's a good place
so
to
we
end
should
it.
not be exploited, and we only get in what we need.
Exactly.
And we capitalize on what we have. And that is local project preparation.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Local project preparation, avoid exploitation, only get the resources that you need. And you also know that the CS Transport equally mentioned this during his vetting, that is going to look into ways of bridging that gap between what
to
you
mention
get
on the dam,
and what you have.
We should go through, it's 100 years, but we should go into prioritization, because there is a national water master plan addressing water resource development. So there is prioritization with regard to irrigation. You need dams for irrigation. You need them for flood management. Budalangi and Nyando are famous for that. So I need flood management. You need them for energy, and you need them for water supply, and to some extent recreation.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well,
so we need to do the ranking, prioritization, and maybe if I was the one doing, I wouldn't do 100 dams on the same day. I would put 10 to this year, another 10 next year, another 10, and in 5 years I have initiated the 50, but I've created a plan because we have a national water master plan.
Okay, thank you. And this was a license that you found it.
Yes.
This is the license that Engineer Matalanga is talking about. So this is basically what you need to be seeing when someone says, I'm engineer so-and-so. Don't just be getting people to do your projects because they say they are engineers. They have to show their identification.
Sure, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time. And we definitely appreciate your valid insights into this topic. Highly value them and appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate.
Thank you.
Yes. I have been speaking to Engineer Patrick Wambulwa to my far left, who is the Chairman Association of Consulting Engineers of Kenya, that is ASEC, as well as Engineer Nathaniel Matalanga, immediate past President, Institution of Engineers Kenya, IEK. What has formed center of our conversation is just tracking the achievements as well as challenges in the engineering sector and how to bridge that gap. Good place to end this conversation, but Good Morning Kenya continues after this break. Stay with us.